Hello and welcome to this video, which is in our engine opening series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, and in this video we are taking a look at a fresh and original idea against the classical Caro-Kann. It's an idea that was played by Berserk against Drofa in the TCEC Season 22, and it's never been seen either in over-the-board chess or in correspondence chess. So you can imagine that it's pretty interesting, and well, as the game showed, it's also pretty powerful. Let's have a look how we reach this idea. So after e4, c6, d4, d5, knight d2, takes, black plays bishop f5. Knight f6 has become also quite popular. It's a Court idea from the 1970s that was revived by players like the English Grandmaster David Howell. It's become very, very popular recently, but bishop f5 is still the main line. Knight g3, bishop g6, knight f3, and now e6. This is actually an important point in the opening. It was long thought to be a serious mistake, actually. Knight d7 was thought to be essential to prevent the move knight e5 coming in. But black players discovered that actually allowing knight e5 with tempo in this position was not so dangerous, because after all we get to attack the knight with knight d7 and maybe even exchange it off early. So bishop d3 is the common idea, takes, knight to d7, and we reach a position that's been played thousands and thousands of times in human play. Now, by far the most popular idea is f2 to f4, and I mean, this was played by Vishy Anand against Magnus Carlsen in a World Championship match, and there have been many courses, DVDs on it. Black's got a lot of ideas, and basically black seems to be holding fine. Bishop f4 has also been played as a slightly offbeat line, but doesn't really achieve very much. And then there's a move that's been played very, very little indeed, queen e2. It's a pretty common idea in the Caro-Kann, and the idea simply is to be able to meet knight takes e5 with d takes e5 without allowing the exchange of queens. What does d takes e5 do? Well, it gives white an outpost on d6, it gains space, prevents a knight coming to f6. In principle, it's a good development for white, and I think what you really see about black is that black only plays knight takes e5 when there's a concrete way to get some sort of compensating advantage. I mean, maybe there's some activity, maybe a pawn on h4 is hanging, maybe lots of pieces have been exchanged, so the resulting position is not that cramped, you know, but there has to be something. Just taking on e5 just like this is basically pretty good for white. So after queen e2, knight f6 is the most common idea, just developing the knight. And now this is where the really surprising idea comes in, castles kingside. So I mean, human players have really been focused, you'd almost say obsessively focused, with castling queenside in these sorts of positions. And the idea is that if your king goes to the queenside, you can also you can try and get some sort of kingside pawn thrusts going. You know, that's the basic idea. However, Berserk demonstrates that well, you know, castling kingside, you can generate quite a lot of pressure just with the pieces. And yeah, really interesting idea. So what are the key points here? Well, first of all, normally in the classical Caro-Kann, black has a big decision about whether to castle kingside or queenside. But when white has played the knight to e5 very early, this knight is attacking the f7 pawn. We said already that taking on e5 for black, little bit of a tricky decision there. You wouldn't want to do it just like that. So in actual fact, in this sort of structure, black is going to castle kingside. We're pretty sure about that. So what sort of attacking chances does white have when black castles kingside? Bearing in mind that, throwing your pawns forward in front of your own king would not be great. Well, you've got a few things here. I mean, first of all, you've got this pawn on h6. It's a hook that was actually created on move 7 when white played h4, threatening h5, trapping the bishop on g6. Black played h6, and this hook was created. And it's not nothing at all. I mean, this bishop on c1 is attacking it here. And it means that if you get, for example, if the black king's castled on g8, you get a major piece on the g file. Or bishop h6 is a big threat. What you've also got is white's got a very nice space advantage, and actually, because white's swapped off the light squared bishops, there's a lot of space along the third rank. So a white rook, we're going to get loads of arrows, aren't we? A white rook can easily come d1 to d3 and then swing over either to the queenside or most likely to the kingside to join in a kingside attack there. And I mean, that exchange of light squared bishops together with the move h6, it means that black's kingside light squares are a little bit sensitive. You can't chase this knight on e5 away with a move like f7 to f6 because g6 is loose. And finally, there's a very interesting and unusual point, is that often in the classical Caro-Kann, for example, in these lines, knight d7, you play h4, h6, and then you throw in this move h5. You gain a tempo on the bishop, and then you exchange it afterwards. The idea being that this move h5 is useful, tying down the pawn on h6. However, in this position, of course, white has gained the tempo on the bishop on g6 with the move knight e5. So he hasn't played h4 to h5. And, well, there's advantages and disadvantages. I mean, first of all, this pawn on h4 is loose. The queen is sort of eyeing it along the d8 h4 diagonal. But it does leave h5 free for the knight, which is a very nice attacking square. And we're going to see this coming up loads. In actual fact, in this line that I showed you, you're seeing a lot of players nowadays not playing h4 to h5, but leaving that pawn on h4. And actually, Spassky in the early 60s was also doing this. So I think there's some definite interest there in leaving this h5 square free for the knight as a sort of attacking idea, and we're going to see that loads. So what happens here? Bishop e7, very obvious move here. c4. Just taking away the d5 square from the knight, which allows white to bring the bishop to this fine square on f4. Castles. And now rook d1. So black now has to decide on the plan. And, well, essentially, I mean, the passive pieces are the major pieces. So these need to find some sort of development. And typically in the Caro, black either plays the queen to c7 or plays the queen to b6. Queen c7 looks a little bit more solid. That's going to be the main line we look at. It sort of feels solid because it's keeping protection of the knight on d7, also looking along the second rank. The one thing you've got to watch out for is this move bishop f4, which looks like it creates some threats. Queen b6 also very very typical. Prepares to get the rook. Maybe to a square like d8, looks at d4, looks at b2. So how do we play from there? There's some interesting ideas that Stockfish played. For example, one idea was to play knight takes d7, knight takes d7, and rook d3. And just going to point out something. Oops. Leaving this pawn on h4 en prise. Now, what you see in a lot of these variations is that the engine, Stockfish in particular, but also Komodo, they are just leaving that pawn to be taken because they consider it unimportant. It's created this weakness on h6. That was what it was there for. And then for the rest, the pawn is unimportant. And you often see even black not even taking it. It costs a couple of tempi. It opens the h file, and there's this target on h6, of course. But I think it's a very important part of white's plan. If you want to get anything in this line, you've got to be willing to sacrifice this pawn on h4. So that was one idea for white, and a typical idea was queen d8, bishop f4, bishop h4, knight e4, knight f6, knight d6, and b6, rook e1. And you can see, well, black's minor pieces are a little bit awkward there. White's minor pieces are placed very well, and well, I mean, Stockfish was getting quite a lot of joy against Koivisto in these sort of positions. Just coming into the third rank, bringing the pieces in, Black really completely paralyzed by the knight on d6. It's not, like winning, but it is very, very dangerous. And as I said, Stockfish did pretty well here. Another idea that Stockfish played after queen b6 was to play a4. Rook's pawns, we're not surprised anymore. Rook d8, a5, queen c7. And White's gained some nice space on the queen side. Got this little break on a6. The one thing that Black has gained actually is, for example, after bishop f4, you can take, and then play queen c8. And the fact that you've played rook d8 allows you to play the queen back to c8, and it's sort of vaguely harmonious for Black. I can show you. I just show you one game that Stockfish played against Koivisto. It was neither engine seemed particularly wowed for White. They both seemed to think that the Black was doing sort of fine. But well, I don't know. I'm not sure how comfortable this looked really for Black. F5, Queen E2, still leaving this pawn on H4 on prise, never worrying about it. Rook d5, Rook e1, Bishop f6, Rook e3, and here Koivisto bit, and actually this is where things started to go just a little bit wrong for Koivisto. Queen h5, Bishop g5, Rook h3, threatening Queen takes g5, Queen d8, f4, Bishop f6, Queen f7, and all of a sudden we're threatening pawn a7, and we've also got ideas of Rook h6, followed by Rook a3 to h3. I mean, there's a lot happening. We're also threatening the pawn on e6 as well. So Koivisto sort of defended a little bit, but it's one of those attacks really that that Stockfish understands so well, because after King d7 it played the stunning move King e2, and we are just looking for Rook eh1. There we are. We showed this theme in the Silicon Road to Chess Improvement. The idea that the best engines, they understand that sort of this space to the right of the king, it can always seem like a bit of an empty space, because after all, the king's in the way. You don't move your king too much. You can't bring anything there. But the modern engines, they really understand this very well. Lots of great AlphaZero examples, and lots of great Leela and Stockfish examples as well. So Rook takes h6 is looking a little bit worrying. This move played by Stockfish, Bishop f6, and now we got this idea, and it just ended up being amazingly just a very nice rook ending for White, which Stockfish converted in a rather beautiful way actually. I mean, the c6 pawn is attacked, and if you defend it with a rook, then we can just attack the f5 pawn. So Black played c5 takes King f7 just to attack the rook on e6, and then we got this gorgeous move which I tweeted all over the place, Rook b6. A beautiful way of picking up the b pawn, and obviously a takes b6, a7, Rook g8, c takes b6 is just terminal. We just play b7 and b8 and queen. So I just wanted to, it's a little bit long but I just wanted to show you this type of position, and to see the danger that Black is under, even if your engines are saying, this is nothing, I'm sure I could hold it. Well, Koivisto couldn't against Stockfish, and Koivisto had 94 threads on this, so it wasn't weak by any means, so I think these sort of typical positions are quite dangerous for Black, which is a very important thing to know about this line. So go back to Queen c7, and now Bishop f4, and I think this is kind of a critical moment for Black, and I think that Black's best move here is the most risky looking move, which is to play the move Bishop d6. Just challenging that knight and looking to play moves like c5 later. It feels very, very risky, both because you're putting you're really keeping the queen opposite the bishop. You might get hit by c4 to c5, and also White's going to double up on the d file. That's going to be the next plan, and then c6 to c5 opening the d file feels very risky. It just about seems to be okay though. I mean, Rook d8, we go Rook d1, And then the Engines want to play b5 first, just to weaken up, soften up White's queenside, and then play c5. And actually, there was a game played by Ali Stein against Pedoni in the TCEC Cup 8 quarterfinals a little while back, and it continued like this. And I think Ali Stein took on d7 and went bishop e5, which was, a slight advantage there. Rook d6, rook b8, but in principle, Black's holding. Although it's easier said for an engine to do this than for a human. But objectively, it's just a slight advantage for White. So that sort of it's kind of in your face, isn't it? Really, just not backing away, not giving anything back. Taking some risks, but fighting back there. I mean, that was the best approach. Drofa played rook fd8, which is also quite obviously quite tactically on the money there. Because I mean, knight takes f7 is possible here. Queen f4, knight d8, bishop d8, queen e6, king h8. And Black's got to be very careful about these because they can turn out to be quite nasty. Okay, 2 pieces for the rook, but 2 pawns and some open files for the rook. But in this specific position, the h4 pawn's rather weak, and we're going to get nicely coordinated with a bishop c7 or a bishop b6, and then the rook coming to e8 or to f8. So Black's doing pretty well here, but really got to watch out with these because they can turn out to be pretty dangerous. But after rook fd8, Berserk came in with rook d3, and now this was the really crucial idea, and it's amazing how quickly Black's position goes downhill. There was one thing basically that, a couple of things that Black could do. One thing here is to play knight takes e5, and we talked about taking on e5, having the proper timing, and this is actually decent timing because if you go d takes e5 now, which is always White's ideal, then we take and go knight d7, and we're hitting e5 and h4 at the same time. And Black's actually doing quite fine here. I mean, there's also ideas of going knight c5 and rook d8. This queen on d3 is not well placed. So after knight e5, we go bishop e5, queen a5, and now rook d1. But again, we've seen very similar positions to this before, and we understood that this was actually, pretty dangerous for Black still, or Black's got to show still some good defensive qualities. I'm just going to show you some things that Black could do wrong here. For example, queen takes a2. This rook pawn is being offered. We've got the move bishop f6, which shows the power of this rook on the 3rd rank. Because after bishop f6, we go rook a3, winning the queen. And if there's g takes f6, then knight f5 is really powerful. And, you'll notice the power of this rook. By the way, the power of the rook on the 3rd rank is a big engine theme. And, there's a full chapter on that in the Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, which I can thoroughly recommend, of course. So knight d7 was actually what Koivisto was playing the most. And now Stockfish was playing this gorgeous move, f4. And it's a really bold move, right? I mean, there's always the possibility of f6 coming in. h4 and a2 are hanging. But White has got a lot of attacking play here. I mean, knight h5 is coming in, rook g3, queen g4. I mean, there's a lot happening here. And, if Black takes on e5, we take back with the f pawn now. And then the f file is open. It's a really sharp position. I mean, I would be delighted to get this with White. Just show you a few interesting things. If you take the h pawn, I go bishop takes g7 here, king g7, queen g4 check, bishop g5, and now this powerful move b4. I mean, the queen has some sort of influence across the 5th rank, but it's very easy to drive away. And queen b4 allows f takes g5. There's just one further idea. I mean, Black can counter with a very cunning knight f6. That looks pretty decent, doesn't it? Chasing the queen away. No, we've got knight h5 check. And after knight takes h5, we've got b takes a5, which is just curtains. Knight to f4, rook b3. A number of my games between Stockfish and Dragon carried on this way, and White was always winning very easily. That's one rook's pawn. If you take the other rook's pawn, you get some amazing lines. Knight h5, g6, rook g3. yeah, I mean, there's lots going on, but I'll just show you the main line because that was just amazing. It's one of those things where you just sort of you understand that this is one thing that you can't really replicate. Either you've got to have prepared this beforehand and learn it, or you just got to admire it. Bishop G7 was Komodo Dragon's amazing idea. The basic point is that we are actually going to play F5 and then Queen E3 and then come in and grab this one. And it's just so hard for black to do anything about it. So the main line here was Queen A5, C5. Again, this white way of cutting the black queen off from the defense of the king. It's very, very powerful. Bishop takes H4. Played now to disrupt the rook. By the way, bishop to H4 would have allowed Rook A3 again, trapping the queen. Again, power of the rook on the third rank. So bishop H4, and now this move F5. And after bishop E3, this move Queen E3. Not taking anything, but just threatening Queen takes H6. Everything hanging for white. G5, F takes E6, which is really dangerous because this one's now opening up the B1 H7 diagonal. So we've got ideas like Queen E4 check coming in. Knight takes C5, chaos on the board. It actually stops the queen from getting to E4 and D3 and exploits the pin on D4. But Rook F1 played, threatening Rook takes F7. Queen A2. Looking typical, actually, Stockfish defense. This is done by Dragon, but it's always these amazing ideas where the queen on one side of the board finds a path back to defend its king. But queen takes G3. We start picking up material now. Knight E4, Queen D3, F5, Rook F5, Queen takes, and now Rook E5. And the point is Queen G6, Rook takes E4. The big point is that the knight on H5 is not hanging, because after Queen H5 we've got Rook E7 check, which will be completely curtains, of course, after Bishop E5. Amazing lines. Actually, I've never seen tactics like this, to be honest. Just totally unusual, totally off the wall, and quite amazing. So, but I mean, we're just showing the danger of these lines, really. But after F4, Knight takes C5 was played quite a bit by my engines. Rook D7, for example, Knight E4. But we're coming in, with Queen G4, Rook F3, or to G3 even, Rook F1. We're playing C5 and Knight D6. I mean, yeah, Stockfish sometimes managed to defend it. So did Komodo. But I mean, it's just, I would just say, I would only want to play white in this position. I would never want to play black. Yeah, I mean, really, really powerful. I mean, something that was happening in some of the games, if black grabbed this pawn H4, this very exceptional move, Knight C5, hitting the rook on D7, and then Queen H5, and then Knight E4, and you force the rook over to E7, so the bishop is sort of stuck out here. And of course, if you take here and go Rook H3, there's big problems here. So F6, Queen G6, and then there was a gorgeous little thing here. I mean, again, we're just threatening Rook H3, E takes F6. It's huge, but one defense was quite nice. Queen D8, EF6, Queen E8, and it sort of looks like, oh, has white sort of overdone things, or has black managed to defend? But there's the lovely little point F7 and Knight D6 check at the end, followed by Knight takes C8. Again, an absolutely gorgeous variation there. So Knight takes C5 is possible then, but as I said, these types of positions are really quite dangerous for black, and especially the point of not having played H4 to H5, having the H5 square free for your pieces. It's I think it's the key difference, really. I think I've analysed positions, very similar positions to this with the pawn on H5, and I never really felt I had anything. But yeah, if only I thought about not playing H4 to H5. The other idea would be to play this move Bishop D6, which we saw on the previous line. The only difference was that when you play 15 Bishop D6, we were getting our rooks organised on F8 and D8, and that protects the king side a lot more. After Bishop D6, white has this extra possibility of going for this position, and we've talked about these ones before. Black gets rook g8, very nice engine move, threatening knight takes c5, queen f5, knight takes c5, rook f3, and now takes, for example, was being played by Stockfish against Komodo. And, Stockfish was holding this. Actually, I'll just show you how Stockfish did it. It was quite amazing. This knight brought back from c5 round to c6. And then at some stage, Black will play a5. We got this position. Queen f7, we're stopping white from playing b4, a5, a4. And this was basically the position that Stockfish held for 100 moves or something. Just sort of knights are beautifully placed, very solid. Not easy to shift with g4 to g5, though. Sometimes my engines tried and it looked pretty dangerous too. But Stockfish was always holding these. But I don't know. I wouldn't really be looking forward to playing this as Black, I have to say. So I think in both cases, after in this position after rook d8, after both knight takes c5, bishop e5, and also after bishop d6, rook e1, and knight takes f7. I would much rather be white in this position. So I think Black's already, has started on the slippery slope already, which is, quite interesting. So Drofa played the move queen a5, and actually after this, Black is just lost, which, I think is really a testament to the power of this line. That I think you just can't underestimate how powerful White's potential kingside initiative here is. But it starts with a move on the queen side, which is rook b3. That's a gorgeous move from Berserk. It's just really awkward to defend this pawn on b7. Obviously, rook b8, we've got knight takes d7. The power of this bishop wins the exchange. And b6 allows knight takes c6. So, no easy ways to do it there. So, what Drofa ends up doing is playing knight takes c5, looking for some tactics to hold that pawn on b7. But of course, after d takes c5, we said you don't really want to take this knight on e5 when white can play d takes c5 because, it's really weakening your king side. There's got to be something really concrete for you to make this an attractive idea. And, actually, there's nothing attractive in this position. And, in fact, white's got the rook on the third rank as well, which can join in an attack. We've got knight h5 coming in, which is already going to threaten bishop takes h6. I mean, this is really unattractive. So, if rook b3 forces knight takes c5, then, it's a massive move. What I wanted to play was to play a move that you see a lot in the Caro-Kann, queen a6, defending the pawn on b7 and attacking, the pawn on c4, maybe putting some pressure there. But actually, the point is that queen is just so far away from the king side now. It's not even hinting at any sort of attack along the defense along the fifth rank. You can't even see what is the path of the black queen to get back to defending the black king. You can't see it. And, this turned out to be just really strong. Again, it's nothing dramatic here, but this rook on the third is a killer. The big problem being here that fe5, I go queen h6, bishop f8, queen e6, and rook g5. Not 100% obvious. I had to blink twice, before I cottoned on, why is this piece sacrifice so strong? But rook h5 is simply mate here. And, if that's the case, then you realise that after rook f8, bishop f4, we're threatening bishop h6. How on earth do you stop that? We're going to come into e1. e6 is weak as well. It's really terrible for black, this position. And look at that queen on a6, doing absolutely nothing. So queen a6 does not work. There's another little tactical thing that was tried by Stockfish, not knight takes c5, but the move rook a c8, rook b7, queen a6. Just trying to give up a pawn, get some sort of tempo, and you're just basically going to try and play. If the rook retreats, you play c5, and you're a pawn down, but at least all your pieces are organised. But there's a gorgeous idea here. Actually, you play rook takes d7, and Stockfish was actually replying with rook d7, takes, knight takes, and b3, bishop h4, knight e4. Queen g4 in this position. And hitting the bishop and threatening bishop h6. So black is forced to give back the pawn, and well, white is just a clear pawn up. It's it's a technical conversion, this basically, and well, Koivisto managed it more often than not against Stockfish. There were a few draws, but there were also white wins, and basically this should be a win for white. But after Rook D7, why on earth isn't black playing knight takes D7? It's not so immediately obvious, it doesn't spring out at you, but I think it's a very useful position to have seen this one, because it shows the power of white's attack here, because this structure, knight e5, bishop f4, knight h5, with the queen involved as well, turns out to be really, really dangerous. I'll just give one sample line. I think you can imagine that bishop h4, actually the engines were coming with rook e1 already, threatening knight takes f7, and after c5, queen g4. I mean, we're getting, really, I mean, how do you defend this guy? It's only the engines that manage to grovel out somewhere, losing lots of material along the way. It's just really powerful. But after knight h5, knight f6, I was just, looking at this saying, what's actually happening there? The tactical point is actually quite unexpected, really. I mean, of course you see bishop h6. That's a natural move, but a natural move to open the g file somehow, right? But after g takes h6, this knight is covering the g4 square, so you can't get there. But actually, there's a gorgeous move, and just try and spot it if you fancy a little tactical exercise. It's the move queen f3, and actually this knight on f6 cannot be defended, and knight h5 just allows queen f7 and knight g6 checkmate. And why does this work? It's the queen on a6. This queen is so far away from being able to defend the king side that a lot of tactics suddenly work. It's really like we've got an extra queen on the king side. And of course, this move queen f3 not only threatens the knight on f6, it also threatens queen g3 to g7 takes f7. So it's just a huge threat here, and black is completely lost. So I think you can really see the power there of rook b3. I mean, black played knight takes c5, d takes c5, knight d7, and black's hoping for some sort of knight c5, and if you took on b7 here, then rook b8 will swap off the rook, and maybe have some chances to grovel on a pawn down. Not pleasant, but Stockfish was managing to hold these sort of positions. But I mean, really, we don't care about that pawn on b7 now. We've got what we wanted. Our d pawn has been promoted to an e pawn, and it's cutting off the black queen along the 5th rank. So now we play knight h5. And, well, I mean, you can imagine, right? Bishop h6, queen g4, rook g3. Take your pick. It's just really, really horrific here. So g6 was played, which I think is kind of the natural move. Bishop h6 now, you couldn't play something like queen e5. Always, you're attacking the knight. Not clear you want to take it, but at least having the threat of taking the knight is nice. I mean, it's here actually that maybe Berserk made a slight mistake. Because Stockfish was playing this gorgeous move, which I think it's just so gorgeous, rook e3. The point is that you attack that b7 pawn, not really to take it, but to force knight takes e5. Knight takes e5 has been forced. Don't let your rook get distracted taking that pawn on b7. That's just that's rather inefficient. Just play the rook back to e3. You're getting out of this knight c5 attack. You're defending the pawn on e5, which threatens bishop h6, and you're keeping your rook on the 3rd rank, just in case black decides to take this knight on h5. And I mean, this was absolutely killing in all of the games. For example, g takes f5, rook g3, king f8, queen takes h5. And now black's in some weird sort of limbo where you can't run with the king because rook g7 is possible. In fact, the only reason you've got any sort of defense at the moment is because bishop takes h6, king g8, rook g7 could be bet by knight takes e5 thanks to the queen's attack. But what that means is, in order to have that defense, you can't move the knight from d7 and you can't move the queen from a5. So you're basically just kind of stuck. There's also another little element. If you play something like, for example, a6, who knows? there is this idea rook g7, which is really, really dangerous. Threatening queen takes f7, and after king g7, king h7, you've got bishop d2 check, picking up the loose queen on a5. Gorgeous. So that is why black should play a move that was completely incomprehensible to me. That's b6. The idea being that if you get this bishop d2 check attack and bishop a5, well, you're protecting the queen so you can take the piece back. Amazing, isn't it? Computer tactics. But actually, what my engines were doing here was incredibly cheeky. Just playing a3, rook c8, and rook f1. Just with the idea of playing b4, force the queen off the fifth rank, and then you've got your bishop h6 and rook g7 idea, or even rook g7 immediately, as we saw. So very, very powerful, and well, my engines were winning within a few moves there. So incredibly dangerous there. What was the best defense that my engines came up with? They were playing knight f8, knight f6 check takes, and then lots of different stuff here. What did I like? Oh yeah, I like this game. Rook d2, queen e1, queen d8, bishop h6. White's always winning a pawn in this line. Black can't stop this. Bishop g7, and now rook takes c4, so winning one back. But h5 now, and what you notice is that actually there's too many open files for black to defend here. So the h file, if that gets opened, you just can't have that with black. So black has got to put something on the h file. But now we just come along the d file, and we're just going to invade there. And the black rook is stuck on h5. Got to stop anything coming to the h file, but now the d file's coming in, and black's got no counterplay. So queen c8, f3, queen c7, king g2. Very nice play there from Stockfish, just consolidating its king. We're not going to get any c5, queen c6 ideas, looking for h1. Rook c8, queen e3, just completely unhurried, no worries about it at all. Queen d2 now, and we're threatening rook d8, which is going to be very dangerous. Queen c5, g4, rook h4, queen d4, swap off the opponent's active pieces, leave him with passive pieces. Queen c7, king g3, rook h7. And now actually something very, very surprising, but I think there's multiple ways of winning. But just bishop f8 and f4, and now we're just going to come in with rook d8 eventually. Well, the engine's put up this great resistance. Can you see the little incidental threat here? We're threatening queen b7, but we're also threatening queen g6 check. So something like b5 would allow queen g6 there, and rook g7 checkmate. Lovely. So queen b7 takes, rook there, g5, a5, rook d7. It's just so terrible for black. And yeah, obviously Stockfish won against Koivisto within a few moves there. But again, you know, really powerful. But I love this. I mean, really, this move rook e3 is amazing, and it's just and it's really just sort of understanding the flow of the position there. So your attack on the queen side forced black to play knight takes e5, which worsens black kingside in two ways. The d pawn becomes promoted into an attacking unit. The queen gets cut off. You know, and then, well, adjust that new reality. Don't distract your pieces. Keep them together and in attacking squares. You know, really powerful. I mean, rook b7 was played by Berserk, and I mean, here in actual fact, if you did this against Stockfish, I'm pretty sure that Stockfish would have played the move g takes h5, which, to be honest, was rook takes b7. Would have played the move after rook b7, g takes h5, which, to be honest, was what I was thinking about. And I didn't really see a clear refutation. I mean, it looked very dangerous, of course, but I didn't really see it. And, you know, this rook on b7, it's not stable on that square. You know, when you've got it on f3 or g3, nothing's going to shift it, and it's really dangerous. But on b7, of course, you've got moves like queen a6, rook b8. So, you know, as an attacking unit, it's kind of a temporary thing, and of course it's going to take a while before you get this guy into play. So it's not surprising that white struggles a little bit to finish black off here. I was getting a mix of draws and wins for white here. For example, this position cropped up quite a lot. Queen f8, queen h8, knight f8, h5, rook b8, and now this one. Just picking up pawns for the knight. I mean, the Engine thought white was clearly better. Maybe something like a plus 1.2, 1.3 advantage. It's not really clear to me, I have to say, but yeah, I mean, they were making quite a bit of this with white. Some wins, some draws, but it's not clear. When you compare it to Rook E3, which is just keeping perfect control of the position. I mean, that's it's not quite the same. Another idea after King F8 was to go Rook B3, but you see, you're so slow. You've taken a pawn on B7, but that rook could already be on G3. And actually taking that pawn on B7 even gives black some sort of play somehow. So it's just I think Rook B7 was not a successful idea there really. But Rook F3, Knight F8, Bishop G3, Knight G6, just in time to cover stuff. But again, we get this sort of situation where white can sacrifice stuff, get the pieces in. Bishop F4 is a very nice move here, threatening Bishop H6, and then Rook F4, Queen H6. King G8 takes, and Queen D2. And we've got this sort of position again where white's got lots of pawns for the piece. In principle looking pretty good, but yeah, black's very active, and this one's a little bit sensitive. We'll maybe get something like Bishop C5, Rook F8. White's always got perpetual and stuff, but yeah, whether this is a win or not, who knows. This one was ending in a draw all of the time in actual fact, so yeah, just not enough for an Engine to win that. So I think it's pretty clear that this move Rook B7 was an inaccuracy, and that Stockfish's Rook E3 was more powerful, more fitting in with the with the changed circumstances in the position. I'll just show what happened though. I mean, Drofa played Queen A6, Rook B3, and yeah, now we're back, right? This rook is on B3 and ready to come over to G3. We've got our attacking structure again. In actual fact, Knight B6 played, and Berserk didn't even bother going for anything attacking. It just played this position, which is very similar to one that we've seen basically. White's a pawn up, the black king is horrible, split pawns. It's a matter of time before white wins, and of course Berserk did a super job of finishing this off. So there we are, rather long video, but I hope it's instructive. I mean, as I said, this plan of Queen E2 and castles is extremely dangerous, and it has never been seen in over-the-board chess or correspondence chess, despite thousands and thousands of games being played from this position. So, I mean, really, it's a hell of an idea to come across. I mean, I think there's a couple of key things about it. I mean, first of all, the idea, I think that that knight takes c5 here is just a good positional outcome for white here. You get a strong pawn on e5, stops black from defending on f6, and an outpost on d6. We're not saying that that's winning, but in general, this is just really conceding a good static advantage for white. So, black really will normally will only play knight takes c5 when there's some sort of clear equalizer, some sort of concrete thing to get hold of to draw. So I think that's one very important thing. The other important thing is the availability of h5 for the white knight, which makes such a difference for attacks with bishop h6 coming in, and also this plan of moving the rook to the third rank, again very powerful. But if you get if you just basically get this basic structure with rook d3, with a rook coming in either to d1 or e1 next move, then I think you've played some extremely simple moves, and it's extremely difficult for black to find the right path. And well, you see Drofa. I mean, it's a 3300 rated engine, right? Playing with 104 threads, and masses and masses of memory, a huge system, and it couldn't work that out. So, I mean, your opponents are going to be a bit lower than 3300 with a bit of luck. So they could definitely, struggle with this. I mean, I'm certainly not confident that I would be able to navigate all these problems myself with black. And then finally, I think just this this move rook e3. I mean, I love this knight h5, really making use of that. never worrying about the H-pawn, remember, and then just not this move Rook B7, but the move Rook E3 from Stockfish. I think it really shows that understanding of the power of this structure, and again, I think that's something that you'd need to remember, if you're playing this with white. But otherwise, I think this is a really great idea, completely fresh. Really, the engines that have seen this and developed this really seen the power in it, and yeah, I could really recommend this. So hopefully somebody will be able to try this and yeah, get some great victories. So yeah, I mean, if you like this video, then why not give me a like or subscribe to my channel, or even take a look at the Silicon Road to Chess Improvement. A book I'm really proud of, all about engine chess, how to train with engines as well, and how to learn from their play. And yeah, I wrote it just a little while ago, but I'm still so proud of it. So do take a look at that. Also, if you like these videos but you thought, oh, this is a little bit long, then why not take a look at the Engine Snacks, which are 5-minute videos with just some, one great moment from engine games. Pretty popular, and yeah, I love doing them as well. So why not take a look at that? But otherwise, thanks very much for watching, and see you at the next video.